Hi folks, Andy Fionn here from Rambles with Robin and Ruby. In this video, we hiked to Worthington Beach on the north shore of Lake Superior, south of the town of Schreiber, Ontario, Canada, to look for disjunct Arctic alpine plants. Along the way, we see evidence of historic mining activity, walk through a valley that likely was created by a melting glacier at the end of the last ice age 10,000 years ago, and yes, we did see disjunct Arctic alpine plant species. Along the hike, I share a few geological features, as well as some of the wild plants I saw. The date of this hike was June 14, 2025, so some plants were not in bloom, and some were just budding. Recall, we are hiking along the cold north shore of Lake Superior, so plant growth is delayed. We staged this hike out of the town of Schreiber, Ontario, Canada. Schreiber is located about 15 kilometers or 8.5 miles west of the town of Terrace Bay along Highway 17, which is also known as the southern route of the Trans-Canada Highway. The beach at Worthington Bay is located about 5 kilometers or 3 miles due south from the town of Schreiber. But to get to Worthington Bay from Schreiber, you first drive east along Highway 17 and then south along an old gravel bush road. Now, despite the very dry summer in year 2025, that old bush road had several wet areas and many rough areas, so we elected to park and walk about 6 kilometers round trip along that gravel road to Worthington Beach. The blue-colored track on this Gaia map shows the 6-kilometer round-trip hike we did to get to and from the parked car to the beach. It was not a strenuous walk. The red-colored track at the top of the Gaia map shows where we got lost while driving on a series of gravel pit roads in the area. Join me as we enjoy a little scenery, a little geology, and associated wild Arctic alpine plants at the rocky Worthington Beach area on the north shore of Lake Superior, Ontario, Canada. Enjoy! We camped at the Stop Along the Way campground in Schreiber, which was conveniently located for us. To get to Worthington Beach, from that campground, we turned east onto Highway 17 and drove through the town of Schreiber. The scenery along Highway 17 north of Lake Superior does not disappoint, and there are many rocky road cuts. After driving about 3.6 kilometers, or 2.2 miles east of Schreiber, you turn south or right onto a gravel access road. The first part of the gravel road off Highway 17 was in good shape. There are several side roads leading to gravel pits that caused us to miss the turn onto a secondary gravel road which leads to Worthington Bay on Lake Superior. Therefore, we had to turn around and retrace our route back to pick up that secondary gravel road we missed. The secondary gravel road to Worthington Bay was a little rougher, and tire ruts might make it a bit more exciting if you were driving during the wet spring or after several days of rain. Along that secondary road, we came to a wet area associated with an alder swamp, so we stopped, backed up, and parked the car. As a retired geologist, I have driven many back roads. I have a habit that may be curious to some. I always park the vehicle pointed towards the exit direction, just in case I have to exit in a hurry, perhaps due to bad weather, an injury, or a threat from a human or a persistent bear encounter. And I never block the road when parked, even if that road seems deserted. Well, it's Saturday, June 14, and we're headed to Worthington Bay to get out onto the lakeshore of Lake Superior. There's also some pictographs down there. We thought we might be able to drive most of the way, but there was one wet section at the beginning, so we decided we'll walk and enjoy this fine trail. Oh, there's some interrupted fern. Well, it looks like we're starting to head down rather dramatically to the Lake Superior shore. It's interesting, the road is consisting of
rounded cobbles and pebbles. Makes you think this was an old shoreline here, an old Lake Superior shoreline that we're walking on now. We're going down into the deeper water, as it were, at one time. But you can see from the cobbles and pebbles on the side, water-worn, rounded. Lake Superior had several levels in the past at the end of the Ice Age. I forget the exact details, but I think the greatest elevation distance between highest level and present level was something around 300 meters. I could be wrong.
The rounded cobbles beg an interesting question. How did those cobbles acquire their rounded shape? I speculate that the cobbles were rounded when transported by an ancient meltwater river. During that transport, the cobbles bounced off each other due to the force of the flowing water. Contact between the cobbles knocked off sharp edges and produced the smooth, round shape of each cobble. So how do we distinguish between those geological processes and which ones contributed to the creation of the cobbles? Is this just a story about a few cobbles? Or is there geological evidence on the land to help us understand the history of the cobbles and valleys? The local topography seen on this image and the geology of the area contain clues to help explain how the cobbles became rounded. On this image, red arrows mark valleys that run from north to south. These valleys end up at the present-day shore of Lake Superior. The old bush road with its rounded cobbles occupy or occur in one of these valleys. I speculate that these valleys were gouged out in part by the ice sheet that covered Ontario during the last ice age, and further sculpted by river systems that occupied the valleys at the end of the ice age. River transport abraded the rock fragments to create the rounded cobbles. This image shows the extent of the ice sheet that covered Ontario during the last ice age. That ice sheet advanced or flowed from north to south. As it moved in a southerly direction, the ice sheet carved troughs into the land, creating new valleys and enhancing existing valleys. Meltwater rivers are another way to create a linear valley, and the rounded cobbles. About 10,000 years ago, the ice sheet melted back towards the north. Geologists say the ice sheet retreated. That retreat released huge volumes of meltwater. The meltwater created huge river systems that locally filled lakes. The meltwater rivers followed and likely further eroded and enhanced the linear valleys, and ultimately entered and filled ancestral Lake Superior. The meltwater rivers transported a lot of debris left behind by the ice sheet and plucked out pieces of exposed bedrock. Pieces of rock debris smashed against each other by the force of the river water. Sharp edges were eroded and became smooth and rounded to become the cobbles we see today. Can we determine if Ice Age meltwater river processes were involved in the creation of the valleys and cobbles in the Worthington Bay area? Yes. Let us look at a geological map that summarizes the distribution of sand and gravel deposits in the area. This is a highly simplified quaternary geological map of the Schreiber Worthington Bay area, documented by the Ontario Geological Survey. The geological data are superimposed on a Google Earth satellite image. By the way, the map data are free and are available online through the OGS Earth data tool. I added a link to the website and data in the description of this video. The tan or light brown colored map units consist of sediments that geologists call glacial-fluvial sand and gravel deposits, which were laid down in a proglacial river and delta. This is a technical way of saying the sand and gravel deposits were laid down by meltwater rivers that flowed from a melting glacier at the end of the Ice Age. The yellow-colored map units consist of sediments that geologists call glacial-lacustrine sand and gravel deposits. That is a technical way of saying these sediments are the result of transport by and deposition from glacial meltwater rivers at the edge and bottom of a glacial lake. That glacial lake grew in front of the melting ice sheet. Finally, the white-colored map units are sediments that were deposited in a large lake adjacent to and in front of a melting glacier. Now, I did not see or visit those sediments, but their documented presence is more evidence that points to the role of a melting ice sheet in shaping the surface geology of the area, including the rounded cobbles. So, armed with this evidence, it's safe to infer that the rounded cobbles seen along the bush road acquired their smooth shape when they were transported towards Lake Superior by meltwater rivers, created by melting an ice sheet at the end of the last ice age. It is likely the meltwater rivers flowed from north to south and emptied into the ancestral Lake Superior at the end of that ice age. By the way, glacial fluvial sediments are good sources of aggregate material used to build roads and other construction projects. So it is no surprise that the sand and gravel pits in this area are developed in these glacial fluvial sedimentary deposits. That's pretty cool. This story of the recent geological history of the Schreiber Worthington Bay area was triggered by the rounded cobbles we saw and the local surficial geology. These story chapters were written at the end of the last ice age, about 10,000 years ago.
So we have made it to Lake Superior, and it was a very good walk. We're, I guess, at the intersection of Death Valley segment, which goes to the east, which is that way, and the Mount Gwyn segment west, which is that way. So we're just going to go around the corner here, see what the entrance to the beach looks like. I recall reading there's reference to petroglyphs, an old gold mill, beach, and we hope some Arctic disjunct flora. Now there's a structure, cement structure. So I suppose that could be the remnants of whatever the reason this road was there for. Maybe that's what they referred to as the old gold mill. I don't think there's a mine right here. I think it's just we're probably bringing material here to process. Quite lovely. Not the old foundation, but the beach itself. So here we are. We're looking west. Beauties. And we're going to walk. I recall we'll just check on the literature, but I think the petroglyphs were somewhere over here. Likelihood of finding it, I think, are remote, but let's try.
It turns out that this old foundation was indeed related to historic gold and silver exploration and small-scale gold mining in this area. This building was likely related to a gold mill, which was constructed here in 1934. Those mining and milling operations lasted on and off from 1934 to 1941. I also saw a large rusty area that geologists call a gossan. A gossan is a natural area and develops when water and air react with surface minerals containing the elements iron and sulfur. There is a particular smell of a gossan that's hard to describe, but the smell comes from the rusting of the iron and sulfur minerals. Pyrite is one such mineral. I suspect this is the type of material that caught the attention of prospectors, both indigenous and European, as far back as the early 1800s, and likely earlier.
Yeah, so there's two spots here. Libby found two spots of encrusted saxifrage. They're not putting up flower stems. There's one there, and there's a really subtle one up there in the middle of that common juniper. There's some encrusted saxifrage, so that's good. And we're very close to Lake Superior. There's the encrusted saxifrage, and Lake Superior is just off to the left. Probably about 10 meters. So we're just amazed by the orange lichen. which I guess is a sunburst lichen, I'm not sure. Lots of calcite scale and some more encrusted saxifrage right there. In the back of this cliff, there's a fault, almost vertical, and you can see how there's a dark line, and it's all about 10 centimeters wide. And that's probably why this particular draw exists here. And all along the left wall, there's lots of encrusted saxifrage. It's cold, it's shady, and there's lots of calcite scale on the rock now. And here's some more encrusted saxifrage with some flower buds. So just a video of the context. The encrusted saxifrage is all along these faces here with the orange lichen. See a little sea cave there. And again, the rock looks silicious. Might be a rhyolite. That draw in there, it's very cold when you walk out of the sun. Encrusted saxifrage along these faces. And there's encrusted saxifrage in that large face with the sunburst lichen. It's all facing out to Lake Superior. The cracks and fractures everywhere in this rock are covered with a calcite lime. So the groundwater is entering into the rock through the cracks and fractures and dissolving, breaking down the rock to release its calcium, the calcium that is part of the rock-forming minerals. And when the groundwater exits to the atmosphere, to the outside, it either evaporates or some other mechanism kicks in and the calcite lime is precipitated. And this is a geological way, a geochemical way by which a calcareous microenvironment is formed. Cool. So we're going to go and have a look at the next little bit of rock over there.
At the beach, we met two hikers, Casey and Megan. They were hiking the Catskill Trail. They offered an interesting observation based on their hiking experience in several countries. In their opinion, the rugged landscape along the Catskills Trail, north shore of Lake Superior, made it one of the more challenging hikes that they've ever done.
So we're just going to get a video of you walking away, doing your strategic planning. Been there, done that, right? See ya. So we're going to have a quick look for the pictographs. And we'll just take a little look along the shore here to see if there's any Arctic disjunct plants here. We've seen lots of encrusted saxifrage. So let's see what's here. Well, there's some encrusted saxifrage.
What is that?
I don't know. We'll have to look.
We saw two different disjunct Arctic plant species on the eastern rock shore, immediately adjacent to the sand beach. One was encrusted saxifrage, and the other was knotted pearlweed. We ran out of time, so we did not walk very far to the east along that rocky shore. We'll have to leave that for a future visit. In closing, I include some of the more interesting plants that I saw growing on the bare rock along the shore of Lake Superior at Worthington Beach.
So this is a wrap for the Worthington Bay hike. We did not see the pictographs, which is probably a good thing, to be honest with you. We did meet Megan and Casey, and they're hiking Catskill Trail. It's going to take them 4 days. So we're going to head back, and that will be the end of our Worthington Bay trip.